Tonight, breaking news, 28 million American children can now get vaccinated. The FDA authorizing Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for kids ages 5 to 11, where children will be able to get their shots. This as protests continue over vaccine mandates. The New York City firefighters suspended after threatening a state senator's staff. The president and the Pope. President Biden meeting with Pope Francis today. The pontiff telling him he's a, quote, good Catholic who can receive communion, directly contradicting several U.S. bishops who wanted to deny it to Biden over his abortion views. The president then coming face to face with his French counterpart for the first time since a major disagreement over a submarine deal. The exclusive interview, the brother of Ghislaine Maxwell speaking out 1 week before the sex trafficking trial begins for the former Jeffrey Epstein confidant. His claims tonight about her alleged abuse behind bars. Family separation payout, the Biden administration considering paying families separated at the border hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what about the parents who have yet to be reunited with their children? Jacob Soboroff with new reporting tonight. The Queen's health setback, the latest medical advice for Queen Elizabeth, the doctor's orders forcing her to cancel engagements for at least 2 more weeks. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. We begin top story tonight with breaking news. The FDA has authorized Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for emergency use in children ages 5 to 11. The lower dose vaccine will now be available for 28 million children in the U.S. The authorization coming after an advisory panel overwhelmingly voted in favor to recommend the vaccine to that age group. That panel reviewing data from Pfizer showing the vaccine was more than 90% effective in preventing serious COVID infection and showed no serious side effects in kids as young as 5. Last week, the Biden administration said they have millions of doses ready to ship and that the shots will be administered at medical offices, pharmacies, community health centers, and clinics. Let's get right to NBC's Tom Costello. He leads us off tonight.
This afternoon's FDA news means hospitals and clinics have just days to prepare for another wave of vaccinations. At Innova Hospital in Fairfax, Virginia, they're prepping to vaccinate 500 young children each day, even bringing in therapy dogs and Star Wars characters. How do you make this clinical setting less stressful for kids?
Lots of things. We give kids stress balls, things to hang on to, distraction, bring in costumed characters. We use the word poke instead of shot. We let kids sit on mom's lap. We let them watch a video for distraction. With full CDC approval expected soon, needles could be going into young arms as soon as the middle of next week. Critical to controlling the pandemic and getting kids back to a more normal life. 28 million 5 to 11-year-olds could be eligible for the shot. Already, 8,300 children in that age group have been hospitalized with COVID. 146 have died, the 8th highest killer. Pfizer's vaccine offered a nearly 91% efficacy in preventing severe infection in children. With only a third of the adult dose offered to kids, the side effects were mostly mild. There were no cases of the extremely rare heart inflammation seen in some older boys and young men.
I think what parents can expect if they vaccinate their 5 to 11-year-old, that a certain percentage will have fever, headache, muscle ache, joint pain. The good news is that just lasts a couple of days and then it goes away on its own.
Children's Hospital in Colorado was a vaccine trial center. Now it's preparing for mass vaccinations and urging parents to sign their kids up.
We've hospitalized over 2,000 children since the start of the pandemic. And so I think it's really important to realize is this is happening to children. Children are getting sick. Children are being hospitalized, and it's a serious thing for them.
With children making up 20% of the population, experts believe vaccinating them is critical to the country achieving so-called herd immunity.
So many across the country talking about this major development tonight. Tom Costello joins us now from Innova Hospital in Fairfax, there in Virginia. Tom, a lot of parents are still nervous about getting their children vaccinated, saying that the risk of death from COVID in children is very, very low. What are experts saying?
It is low, but, however, we should tell you that the risk that you're going to have some sort of an adverse reaction from the actual vaccine, that's even lower. And listen to this. More kids have been hospitalized because of COVID than the flu. And 17,000 kids under the age of 18 have died, 17,000. So the experts are saying they're very worried about that. And they're also worried about the potential long-term effects. If your child gets COVID, that he or she may not be over it quickly, that they may have long-haul symptoms, muscle fatigue and aches and pains and struggling to actually think and concentrate, and that could go on for months or years and really affect their future. So the experts are saying, listen, get the vaccine. The risk is so minimal and the upside is so great.
It's off tonight here on Top Story. Tom, thank you. Joining us live now with more on this breaking news is senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. Dr. John, give me your honest opinion here with every single rollout we've had during this pandemic. And to be fair, it's all been new. We've had a lot of hiccups. So do you think there'll be hiccups with this rollout? And how quickly can we expect shots to get into the arms of kids?
And Tom, you're right. We have had a lot of hiccups, especially early on. If you remember back in January, February timeframe, long waiting lines, took days to get your vaccines. They ironed out some of those wrinkles over time. And now, especially with the booster shots for adults, doesn't seem to be a big problem. But with children, so many children coming up very quickly to try and get their booster or their vaccines, that could be a bit of a hiccup. And like Tom was saying, Tom Costello, that this is going to be in doctors' offices, pharmacies, hospitals like you saw there in Colorado. And so that is going to certainly help out. But at the same time, there is going to be that large rush up front. And so people just have to, especially parents, just have to be patient when they get their children vaccinated.
So we're seeing COVID rates come down in almost every single state so far right now. 28 million kids will be eligible for the vaccine. What kind of impact do you think this is going to have on society as we sort of continue to battle COVID-19?
And Tom, I think this is going to have a huge impact. And I think what we see here is these rates come down. But remember, this is the fourth wave. This is not the first time we've seen them come down and then subsequently possibly go back up again. And we've had that wave after wave. And so the concern is, will they go back up again? Experts are saying possibly. And so we need to be prepared for it, especially children. And like Tom Costello was saying, children right now cannot get vaccinated. And it turns out last week, according to American Academy of Pediatrics, 118,000 of them ended up getting COVID. That is 25% of the COVID cases around here. And to date, throughout the pandemic, over 8,000 have been hospitalized, a third of those in the ICU, some of those having long-term consequences because of that. And unfortunately, in this age group, 146 have died from COVID. That is a preventable disease, a preventable death with the vaccine.
And it's always important to remember those stats because they put everything into perspective. All right, Dr. John Torres for us tonight. Dr. John, thank you. We turn now to the ongoing vaccine mandate battle, a sweeping requirement for municipal workers to get the shot taking effect today, but multiple states suing to block those mandates. The FDNY warning of potentially longer response times to emergencies, and 6 firefighters here suspended after allegedly threatening a state senator's staff. Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
Late today, as New York City's COVID vaccine mandate for municipal workers kicked in, unions for the nation's largest fire department warned of the potential for closed firehouses and longer emergency response times.
New York City is going to come to a crisis on Monday morning.
Earlier today, the city said just 67% of its firefighters had received at least one dose. Those who don't get the shot face unpaid leave starting Monday. Tonight, 6 firefighters have been suspended for driving a ladder truck while on duty to a state senator's office and allegedly threatening the senator's staff over the COVID vaccine mandate. From coast to coast, more showdowns over shots. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva is calling his area's COVID vaccine mandate an imminent threat to public safety, saying it's causing a mass exodus within his department. Also in California, popular burger chain In-N-Out just shut down more restaurants rather than comply with mandates.
I can see where they're coming from, that it's not their job to, as they put it, be vaccine police.
Today, 10 states filed a new lawsuit against the Biden administration's vaccine requirement for federal contractors. Iowa's governor signed a new law allowing workers fired for noncompliance with COVID vaccine mandates to receive unemployment benefits. And next Tuesday, a new deadline for the Air Force. Up to 12,000 personnel have rejected orders to get fully vaccinated despite a Pentagon mandate. Still, the vast majority of active duty airmen, more than 96%, are at least partially vaccinated. And tonight, word that the U.S. Supreme Court won't block a COVID vaccine mandate for healthcare workers in Maine. Back in New York City, officials say the last-minute push is working. The NYPD now reporting more than 80% compliance, up from 70% last week.
So I think we're heading in the right direction.
Gabe joins us now there in New York from outside of a firehouse. So, Gabe, you know, we saw that last part of your story there. The vaccination rates are going up, but there's going to be a lot of police officers, a lot of firefighters who are not vaccinated come Monday. How is the city going to enforce this vaccine mandate?
Well, Tom, as we mentioned, the deadline was 5 p.m. It just expired for them to show proof of vaccination. So at this point, we'll see how things play out on Monday. But the union officials are urging their membership to go to work and essentially force the city to send them home. The mayor, for his part, has been saying that these employees will not be fired, but will be placed on unpaid leave. Tom?
All right, Gabe, thank you for that. Just moments ago, I spoke with Jim McCarthy. He's the president of the Uniformed Fires Officers Association about this vaccine mandate standoff and why some firefighters are refusing to get their shots. Are you just against the mandate? Are you against being told you have to get vaccinated to work for the city of New York?
That's exactly correct. Exactly correct. We're against the mandate, and certainly the way the de Blasio administration imposed it upon us with 9 days to make a decision. The teachers had 30 days. The corrections officers have till December 1st. We had 9 days, October 20th to October 29th, to make a decision that's life-altering. And I'm not talking about just getting a vaccination. People that want to retire, they wouldn't be able to retire if they didn't get their retirement papers in by the 27th. It generally takes our guys 3 months to do all the research and pick up to 14 choices that the city gives us for which retirement program we want to join. 9 days is not enough time. We were asking the de Blasio administration to give us an extension. Let our membership have some time to make those decisions and life-altering family decisions with their spouses and children.
Jim, if a single New Yorker dies because there weren't enough firefighters on call, whose fault is that?
I don't think it's anybody's fault. You can't fault anybody. It's the department's purview to staff firehouses and fire companies. They're the ones that make sure that we're equally represented all around the city. If somebody dies, we're going to do our best efforts, no matter what happens. When the alarm goes off, the fire truck's going to go out and do the best we can. Our membership is fully trained and working above and beyond the call of duty, as we've done for over 150 years. We're going to do the best we can with what we have. If it's the department's problem to make sure that we have enough people and we have enough equipment, it's not our fault. So I can't tell you whose fault it's going to be, but it's not our fault. We're just doing the best we can with what we're given.
Finally, Jim, are you vaccinated?
I am. I got vaccinated very early.
Have you encouraged your members to get vaccinated?
As soon as it was allowed.
Have you encoured your other firefighters to get vaccinated?
We tell our members that the vaccination, we demanded that fire officers get access to the vaccination as early as possible, right after the nurses and doctors was available for, and we encouraged them to get vaccinated, but it was up to them what they wanted to do.
So you encourage it, you've gotten it, you're telling people to get it, you just don't want to be told you have to get it. I think that's where we're at.
I want to be able to negotiate the parameters of how we're going to do it.
All right, Jim McCarthy for us there. Now to day one of President Biden's foreign trip, the president meeting with Pope Francis, then French President Emmanuel Macron before a marathon climate summit this week. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander reports tonight from Rome.
For President Biden, a day of devotion and diplomacy. America's second ever Roman Catholic president having a private audience with Pope Francis, with whom he's built a personal bond, giving him a ceremonial commander coin and a compliment.
You are the most significant warrior for peace I've ever met.
President Biden was later asked whether the issue of abortion came up.
No, it didn't. It came up and just talked about the fact that he was happy I was a good Catholic and keep receiving community.
That has been a source of controversy, with some U.S. bishops recently arguing Catholic politicians who support abortion rights, including the president, should be denied communion. Just last month, Pope Francis called abortion homicide, but he's never denied anyone communion. And the Vatican statement today notably made no mention of the highly contentious topic.
Is the relationship repaired?
Hours later, President Biden looked to rebuild trust with America's oldest ally, meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron for the first time since Macron recalled France's ambassador from Washington. Furious, the U.S. took a multi-billion-dollar submarine deal away from France without notice. Mr. Biden admitting to Macron his administration made a mistake.
I think what happened was, to use an English phrase, what he did was clumsy. It was not done with a lot of grace.
Macron looking to move past the dispute.
What really matters now is what we will do together in the coming weeks, the coming months, the coming years.
The president arriving in Europe without the political win he'd been hoping for, despite privately pushing Democrats at the Capitol Thursday to get behind the $1.75 trillion framework for his social spending and climate plan, even arguing his presidency is on the line. But while progressives endorse that plan, they still refuse to vote for it or the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until they're convinced moderate holdout senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are on board too.
We need a little bit more than an IOU. We need to know what it is that we're going to commit to.
And Peter Alexander joins us now from Rome. Peter, I want to go back to that meeting between the pontiff and President Joe Biden. That was sort of a monumental moment in this presidency. Joe Biden has gotten a lot of criticism from Catholics who don't agree with his stance on abortion. Yeah. But then the president coming out and saying that the Pope himself told him he was a good Catholic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Among the other takeaways from this visit is just the length of time that it lasted, an hour and 15 minutes, when then Senator Biden met with Pope Francis II back in 1980. The meeting was only 40 minutes long, and everyone said it was historically long. So they really have built a personal relationship together, not the first time they've been together. In fact, this was their fourth meeting, though the first for President Biden as president. Tom?
And Peter, as the G20 gets underway, we know climate change is so important to Pope Francis, as it is to President Biden, something they possibly talked about and something that's going to be on the agenda moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In the days ahead, of course, you have that climate conference by the UN taking place in Scotland next week that President Biden will be attending. And over the next couple of days, the G20 summit here in Rome. President Biden says during that private conversation that Pope Francis emphasized to him the moral responsibility to protect the planet. Tom?
Peter Alexander tonight from Rome. Peter, thank you. We turn now to Albany. The county sheriff speaking today, saying a comprehensive month-long investigation led to the forcible touching misdemeanor charge against former Governor Andrew Cuomo.
We have an overwhelming amount of evidence. We have a victim who's been cooperating fully.
Cuomo is accused of groping a woman under her blouse. The victim wasn't named in the criminal complaint. Cuomo's attorney, Rita Glavin, says he never assaulted anyone. Investigative correspondent Tom Winter joins us now on set here on Top Story. So, Tom, walk us through this. What type of evidence is the sheriff talking about?
Right. So from the huge one-page filing that we have to reference, they actually do list out several of the items of evidence that they say corroborate and support the criminal charge that they've brought already. That includes cell phone records. It includes, believe it or not, BlackBerry PIN messages, if you remember those from back in the day, a badge swipe, so the types of IDs that you would use to get into a location, perhaps like the governor's mansion, includes flight records from the state police on the day, December 7th, where this incident allegedly occurred. So those are the types of things that they say they have. They have the records. They filed search warrants. They've been able to obtain records from the AG's office. So it's all come together, they say, to lead us to this point where the governor's now charged.
I know there was some confusion about how the charges were filed, and the DA was even surprised?
Right. I mean, so yesterday when we found out that the governor faced a charge, the DA at that point also found out that the governor was facing a charge. And what happened here, according to the sheriff, is they went to the court and they said, look, we've got all of this, and we've done our homework and look it over, and then we'd like you to issue a criminal summons. What the sheriff says they didn't anticipate is that would be approved in 5 to 10 minutes. And at that point, it's a public document. It's open to you, me, anybody else in the state of New York or in the country that wants access to it. That's how we were able to report it. That's how we're able to detail these charges. And so that's why he says that the DA's office was surprised, because they didn't have a chance to brief them. Legal experts throw a little bit of caution on that and say, well, shouldn't you have been briefing the DA throughout the process? Right. Shouldn't you have reached out to the governor's attorney in advance? So still a little unclear how this all went down yesterday, and it's a little weird for us to be talking about the process on day two. Normally, at this point, we're delving more into the topic of why he was charged.
So Cuomo has said he is innocent of these charges, and he has said this is all political. That's not really a defense that's going to help when he's charged of a crime. So the question is, does he have a point about this being political? But the bigger question is, will that even help him in court?
Yeah, it doesn't. In these cases, when we're talking about a Class A misdemeanor, very rarely go to jury trials. So the idea that this is somehow political and that interrupts this prosecution, it's very unlikely. I mean, when you look at this, it's a single allegation that was brought forward by a woman. They say they have corroborating evidence or evidence that supports her claims or proves her claims. And the sheriff was very clear today. This is somebody who we've talked with. We've been involved in speaking with her during the entirety of the process. Whether or not the sheriff is the most partisan person against Andrew Cuomo or not, at the end of the day, does the evidence stick in court? Are the charges, or the charge in this case, can it be proven? And I think that's where this case lies. It doesn't really matter to a jury or to a judge whether or not there's a political part of this when you get down to the core of it.
Tom Winter walking us through it all. Tom, thank you for that. Still ahead tonight, family separation payout. The Biden administration now in talks to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to families separated at the border. The scathing response from the former vice president. Plus, rapper Fetty Wap arrested at a concert. Authorities now saying he helped traffic cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl across state lines. And the brother of Ghislaine Maxwell speaking publicly just a week before the ex-girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein is set to go on trial. Vaughn Hilliard in the House joining Top Story tonight with more on that exclusive interview, including what Maxwell's brother is saying about her life behind bars. You're watching Top Story. We're just getting started. Welcome back. The brother of former Jeffrey Epstein associate accused of running a sex trafficking ring, asking for an investigation into his sister's treatment at a New York detention facility. Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison since 2020, alleges she's being abused mentally and physically. Vaughn Hilliard with more on this exclusive interview obtained by our partners at Sky News.
Tonight, just 1 week before jury selection begins in the trial of Ghislaine Maxwell, the former confidant of Jeffrey Epstein, her brother, Ian Maxwell, speaking out in an exclusive interview with Sky News.
It seems to me that Ghislaine has already been convicted.
Maxwell complaining about her living conditions in jail.
She is woken up every 15 minutes. This is a suicide watch, but my sister is not a suicide risk.
The former British socialite is now the focus of investigators as they work to untangle a complicated web of allegations, including aiding a sex trafficking network for convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. After Epstein's apparent suicide in a New York prison in August 2019, unsealed documents revealed allegations about her role in procuring underage girls for him throughout the 90s and early 2000s.
I think everybody felt that they were cheated by Mr. Epstein's death. I think that was something that was upsetting. I think now that Ms. Maxwell is going to go to trial, I think that is something that they're looking forward to.
Maxwell was arrested in July 2020 on charges relating to sex trafficking.
Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old. Maxwell played a critical role in helping Epstein to identify, befriend, and groom minor victims for abuse.
Maxwell has pled not guilty to the charges. After Epstein's death, 23 victims, either directly or through their attorneys, presented statements to a federal judge. NBC News spoke with one of Epstein's accusers at the time, Virginia Giuffre, who alleged Maxwell lined up sexual encounters for more than just Epstein.
The first time in London, I was so young. Ghislaine woke me up in the morning and said, "You're going to meet a prince today." And I hop in the car with Ghislaine and Jeffrey, and Ghislaine said, "He's coming back to the house, and I want you to do for him what you do for Epstein." I couldn't believe it.
Maxwell dodged questions about Prince Andrew and Giuffre's sexual past, but insisted it never happened in her London home. Maxwell's brother calling for an investigation into her 16-month prison stay.
She's lost weight, she's losing her hair. We know that she's suffered some kind of physical abuse because she had a black eye. I don't see Ghislaine administering a black eye to herself. So I'm assuming that that was dished out to her.
Do you believe that your sister has been beaten by prison guards?
I think she has suffered some occasional physical abuse at the hands of her guards, yes.
A spokesperson for the Bureau of Prisons, declining to respond to specific allegations, wrote in part in a statement, the BOP takes allegations of staff misconduct seriously and, consistent with national policy, refers all allegations for investigation if warranted. the brother urging the public to give his sister a fair trial.
Isn't she entitled to a fair trial?
Do you think you'll ever see her free again?
I certainly hope so. I'm counting on it.
After Epstein's death, his accusers felt cheated, something that many like Shantae Davies do not want a repeat of.
I would love to see her take some responsibility and just own up to what she's done. That would be a huge deal to me. Justice has already failed us a few times before in this situation.
Vaughn joins us now on set. So, Vaughn, there at the top of your story, you mentioned we're 1 week away from jury selection in this case. What more do we know?
Yeah, there are going to ultimately be 12 jurors selected, 6 alternates, but there are going to be about 600 individuals who are summoned to go through weeks of this jury selection process, which begins this Thursday. Right now, Ghislaine Maxwell is not part of the general population at that prison. Again, 16 months in prison and ahead of her trial here. There's a lot of questions here in these next couple of weeks. She did not want the public or the press to have access to this jury selection, but the judge ruled that everybody will be able to watch those proceedings unfold.
All right, Vaughn, thank you for that. When we come back, the death penalty debate reignited. Witnesses saying an Oklahoma inmate convulsed for several minutes after a lethal injection. It would be the state's 3rd consecutive botched execution, but officials are now pushing back on those claims. And a consumer alert tonight, the popular hummus pulled from the shelves over allergen concerns. We'll tell you what happened. Stay with us. Now to Top Stories news feed, and we begin with rapper Fetty Wap, arrested on federal drug charges. The indictment alleging the artist was part of a nationwide drug trafficking ring. The move more than 100 kilos of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl, and crack cocaine. The rapper was taken into custody during a New York City music festival, along with 5 other people, including a New Jersey correction officer. Officials in Oklahoma pushing back on claims they carried out another botched execution. Witnesses saying convicted killer John Marion Grant died after convulsing and vomiting for several minutes following a lethal injection. It was the first execution in the state following 2 botched lethal injections over 6 years ago. But today's prison officials said Grant's reaction were not uncommon and said the procedure was, quote, completed without complications. A consumer alert tonight. A popular hummus is being recalled over allergen concerns. Cedars Mediterranean Foods issuing an alert on 10-ounce packages of their organic Mediterranean hummus. The company says they have an incorrect label that does not show the product contains pine nuts. And Americans urged to go out and enjoy Halloween this year, but to avoid a scare, pediatricians are offering some tips to keep kids safe from COVID-19. Health officials suggesting kids wear costumes that can incorporate a mask. Parents should also trick or treat in smaller groups and maybe ditch the big bowl of candy this year and consider handing out individual candy bags or candy bars. All right, now to the Americas. Stories focusing on the U.S. and Latin America. Tonight we turn to the southern border as the Biden administration considering payments to families who were separated under President Trump's zero-tolerance policy. The payments could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per family. NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff has more.
Tonight, the Biden administration negotiating what could be a financial settlement of hundreds of millions of dollars for families who were torn apart. The talks ongoing between the Justice Department and lawyers representing thousands of migrant parents and children who were separated at the U.S. border during the Trump administration. A number of tort cases claiming the families experienced harm when they were forcibly separated. 3 sources familiar with ongoing negotiations tell NBC News that on the table are what for some separated families could be payments of hundreds of thousands of dollars per person in compensation. The Wall Street Journal first reported on Thursday that the Biden administration's in talks to offer significant financial compensation for what the families endured. Sources caution the settlement negotiations aren't final. Former Vice President Mike Pence today lashing out at word of possible compensation for those separated by his administration's policy.
This incomprehensibly stupid idea of passing out up to $500,000 to people whose first act in this country was a violation of our law makes no sense at all.
Under former President Donald Trump's Zero Tolerance Initiative in 2018 and a pilot program in 2017, more than 5,600 kids were separated from their parents after crossing the border both at and in between ports of entry. Many held in cages at the Central Processing Center in McAllen, Texas, as we reported at the time.
People in here are locked up in cages, essentially what look like animal kennels. I don't know any other way to describe it.
Until the policy, crossing the border illegally, a misdemeanor under U.S. law, didn't result in parents who crossed with kids being federally prosecuted and separated from their children. President Biden, as a candidate, was harshly critical of the family separation policy.
It's criminal. It's criminal.
As president-elect, he promised accountability and a thorough investigation of the policy, and once inaugurated, created a task force to reunite the families. Today, more than 1,000 families are estimated to still be separated from each other, according to the White House. In many cases, the parents were deported back to their home countries, while their children remained in the U.S. In May, we spoke with Brian Chavez, the day before he became the first person separated during the Trump administration, reunited by the Biden administration.
It's just a really cruel experience that I just hope no one has to go through.
So far, the task force has been able to reunite around 50 families, with the White House saying many more will take place soon. Lawyers representing families like Brian's hope that's the case, and that the Biden administration agrees to allow deported parents to return to the United States on a permanent basis. The payments under negotiation could go to the separated parents and children, whether they're in the U.S. or Central America. Sources involved in those negotiations worry leaked details of them aren't only creating confusion for families separated, but make them a target of crime as well. Now, those families who have endured so much, again, looking for answers.
Jacob Sobroff joins us now from Los Angeles, and Jacob has done so much reporting on this issue. So I have to ask you, we just heard from the former vice president there, and he threw out that number, $500,000. There's been some reporting about the exact number. I know it's still unclear. But Jacob, how do you put a price tag for the families that have suffered this torture, both the children and the parents?
I think it's almost impossible, Tom, and you used the word torture. That's the exact language that Physicians for Human Rights, the Nobel laureate organization, has called this. American Academy of Pediatrics called it government-sanctioned child abuse. You and I covered this together almost shoulder to shoulder at the time down there in both Brownsville and McAllen, Texas. And what the people close to the victims and those separated will tell you is that there is no price to pay that can right the wrong of the family separation policy. And that is why there is so much caution that the fact that these negotiations are not final and that there are consequences to the negotiations even leaking out right now.
So what's been the reaction from the families and those NGOs who have been working with these parents to sort of reunite them with their children?
I think it's mixed, Tom. I think that there's cautious optimism that perhaps these families could be compensated for something that, they say no human being should ever have to go through. But there's also great fear in their home countries in Central America that this could make them, the announcement, the target of potential crime. And also the fact that this may not happen at all. And that's getting the hopes up of people who have been through just really what is truly an unspeakable tragedy.
Jacob Sobroff for us tonight. Jacob, thank you for that. Now to top stories, Global Watch, and we begin in Bali with the American woman released from jail after she helped kill her mother and stuff her into a suitcase. Heather Mack and her boyfriend convicted of murdering her mother in a Bali resort in 2015. Her body later found in the backseat of a taxi outside that hotel. Mack serving only 7 years of a 10-year sentence. She's slated for deportation back to the U.S. in the next few days. Cuba has voted to expand its citizens' legal rights. It's coming amid growing criticism over the mass arrests of protesters this summer. Cuba says under the new laws, those accused of a crime will be notified of potential charges against them. They will be granted the right to an attorney within 24 hours of detention and will be able to access their own court documents. But Cuba experts say how those laws are implemented will determine whether or not Cubans see significant changes in their legal rights, since there is no independent legal body in the communist country. And the health setback for Queen Elizabeth. Buckingham Palace announcing doctors have advised the Queen to rest for 2 weeks and cancel any official engagements in that time frame. The 95-year-old monarch already pulling out of the COP26 climate summit in Scotland after she spent a night in the hospital last week. Back here at home, we continue our County to County series where we take you inside key bellwether counties across the country. Tonight, we're heading to Washoe County in Nevada. Some are calling it the wild card that could help decide if the 2022 midterms flip the Senate. NBC's Guad Venegas is there talking with voters.
Not wearing a mask. I'm not hip on it, dude. I think I should be my own free person. No stick and no needle on my arm. I don't like it. If I'm going to stick something in there, it better be alcohol.
This COVID deal is real, and some people, I know, they have a different opinion, but I do believe in science.
Welcome to Washoe, Nevada.
A swing county and a swing state where Democrats and Republicans split the numbers in a microcosm of the country. The once Republican county has become a booming industrial hub with Democrats gaining ground. Since Obama, every Democratic presidential candidate has won this county, but during that same time, a Republican congressman was elected here.
It is very divided. This is more of a city. You do get more of a demographic that are younger professionals, but then you do have those kind of people that have been here a long time. They're, cowboys. They, have farms and things like that. So they may believe a little differently.
The current breakdown: 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, and 1/3 nonpartisan.
I was independent for a while. And then I voted Republican in the past, and I also voted Democrat.
With major companies like Microsoft and Tesla creating jobs at the industrial park nearby, Californians are moving in by the thousands. The rising cost of housing now on everyone's mind.
It's like $2,000 for like a studio apartment in this very up and coming area, but it shouldn't necessarily be that much.
Tom Clower moved here from California and runs a business.
I support rebuilding the infrastructure of the country. I think a lot of it's in really sad shape right now. But I think when you pack it full of other things in that bill and try to just shove it to us and create a tax issue and inflation that's going to hit my kids and my kids' kids, I don't think that's a good thing.
The changes here are also creating diversity, with a growing Latino population now making up almost 16% of eligible voters, even though they're 25% of the population, and the issues that matter to them are often unique to their community.
Y que queremos una reforma migratoria para toda nuestra gente, pues.
Eso es lo importante.
Yeah.
So he says all Hispanics want immigration reform, so that was the most important issue for him.
With an evolving economy and demographics that mirror the increasing political clout of Latinos across the country, political forces are expected to collide here, a bellwether for the nation.
All right, Guad Venegas joins us now live. Guad, so people know Washoe County, that's Reno, Nevada. Usually when we're talking about Nevada, Clark County, that's where Las Vegas is. That's the most important. But if things are tight, everyone's going to be looking at Washoe. So you were there in the county. Talk to us. They're looking to keep a Senate seat the Republicans want to take back next year. With a Senate split at 50-50, this county actually has some big national implications.
Right, so if they want to flip that Senate seat, they want to win those nonpartisan voters here in Washoe County, with most conservative voters telling us they are not happy with the Biden administration, Tom.
So you talked to a lot of voters there in Washoe County in the Reno area. What was the #1 issue for them as voters?
#1 issue, Tom, across the board is housing. This is a growing city. They don't have enough housing for all the people moving in and the ones that live here. Just so you have an idea, the medium household here, or the medium house that is worth $500,000, $500,000 for the average house in Washoe County. It's gone up about 30% in the last year, so some people just can't afford to buy a house or pay the rent in this county, Tom.
Yeah, with salaries in some cases not going up. All right, Guad Venegas, great reporting out there. Thank you, Guad. Coming up, the growing mystery surrounding former lawyer Alex Murdock. He's now facing charges in connection to the death of his housekeeper, and her family is speaking for the first time in an all-new interview on Dateline. Our Craig Melvin with a preview on Top Story coming up. Welcome back. If it's Friday night, you know it's Dateline. And tonight, our team takes a closer look at the downfall of powerful South Carolina lawyer Alex Murdock. The secrets, scandals, and serious accusations now swirling around his family. NBC's Craig Melvin reports.
Hey, Tom. Tonight on Dateline, I'll have the very latest in this headline-grabbing case of Alex Murdock. I talked exclusively to the family at the center of one case that led to his most recent arrest.
She worked hard at what she did, and she loved what she did. She took honor in the job that she did.
Gloria Satterfield was the Murdock family's longtime housekeeper. Her sister Ginger told me the families were close.
We thought of them as an extended family also because Gloria did.
In February 2018, Gloria stopped by the Murdock home and there was an accident. What were you told about what had happened?
Just that she had fell, that she was tripped by the dogs, and that they thought she had a head injury because they saw blood. And that was about it until we got to the hospital.
Gloria languished in ICU for 21 days. Ginger will always remember the last one.
I just said, Gloria, I'll be back tomorrow, and I love you. And she told me, love you too. That's the last words I heard her say.
At her funeral 2 days later, Gloria's son Tony says Alec Murdock pulled him aside and said he would make sure Tony and his brother got an insurance settlement for the accident. Did you believe him?
Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I?
He said, I want to make sure the boys are taken care of because he loved Gloria that much.
But 3 years went by and nothing seemed to be happening. No money came their way.
And I says, you know, something's fishy about this thing. And I said, I just don't think these boys are going to get what they deserve, what's, you know, due to them.
Then came the shocking news of the murders in the Murdock family. Buried in the slew of news articles was a mention of the housekeeper's death and the $500,000 settlement that had gone to her children. That was news to the family. How much money did the family get after Gloria died?
Zero.
Not a dime.
Not a dime.
They hired lawyers to investigate and discovered something startling. The actual insurance settlement for Gloria Satterfield's death totaled $4.3 million. Where did all the money go?
We're still tracing where the money actually landed, but it is impossible to burn that kind of money in Hampton, South Carolina.
On October 14th, Alec Murdock was arrested, charged with obtaining property by false pretenses in connection with that $4 million settlement. He has not yet entered a plea. But the crime that landed this family in national headlines, the murder of Murdock's wife and son, remains unsolved. So, Tom, as you know, I mean, this is a story with so many twists, so many turns. We're going to bring you all of them tonight, a number of exclusive conversations, folks connected to the story that you have not heard from before. We'll also have the very latest on the investigation as well, and more coming up tonight on a special edition of Dateline, 9 o'clock Eastern on NBC.
Craig, we will be watching tonight.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.